loads of brands now saying that's plastic-free packaging. But I'm like, okay, so like as you say, were the pods packed in plastic? I don't know. How are the people treated who worked on the fields? I don't know. And ultimately, I think it's something that I always have to weigh into consideration with these things. Is sometimes like that ultra plastic free alternative might not be so good for the people. So I guess um, when making, let's say, chocolate from a cacao bean, like what are the different processing steps like, and like how many different places would like one of these pods have to travel before it turns into a chocolate bar?
So it's really dependent on the place. It changes. For us, we try to make it short. So I'll give you the short version, and I can also tell you how each process is separated. So when these are plucked up off of a tree, they're opened, and inside should be beans. This one does not have beans, but we would take out the beans and ferment them. Now, fermentation boxes can either be made out of metal, wood, or plastic. And so we encourage wood just because it's better. It has semi-permeable pores. But for smaller production scales, they would use metal or plastic fermentation boxes. The plus side is that it can be reused indefinitely. The downside is that at some point it's not as beneficial to the chocolate fermentation. So that's one of the parts that it's used for. The next part is drying, which is perfectly fine. Sometimes we have to use more sustainable options for drying, either solar drying, or there are drying stations where it's just lined with plastic as well, just because that's the practical option for farmers that are available. And also for hygiene, I feel like one of the biggest challenges in any food production stage is just the concept of hygiene and keeping things clean. But for our case, we try to use banana leaves and these kind of woven baskets to do that, which is really fun. And then on the other hand of it, you have the drying and the roasting. So roasting it is roasted in an oven. It's pretty straightforward. And that's ended up to be ground into cocoa nibs. So cocoa nibs, I have like a little example of a packet here, are the like, it's just basically beans that have been dried, roasted, and it's like how you find coffee beans. It's very similar in that process. But from there, we go through refining. So they're kind of ground through a refiner or a melanger, which is a big mortar with heavy rocks that grind the beans into super, super fine particles that become a chocolate liquid. So it looks like melted chocolate. You integrate sugar at this point, and then it goes into packaging. So packaging is the challenge because that's where the most plastic is involved. You would have your silicone molds or plastic molds. They can be single use, they can be reusable. Of course, we encourage reusable ones. And then it becomes a chocolate bar, and then it goes into packaging. So packaging is dependent on food laws wherever you go. So wherever these bars of chocolate are made depends on the packaging it's made in. So I have a bunch of different packaging options right here for chocolates. You have like your little ones in the box, and then we have paper ones, which are a little bit more sustainable. However, because of food policies, the interior has to be lined with plastic because you never know, throughout shipment it might melt or something like that. And also, when you mentioned tape and how you gave it up, a lot of packaging requires tape or some sort of plastic glue to bring it together. But you can also use, which is a slightly more sustainable option, kind of these reusable Tetra packs, which have a Ziploc. So they're reusable. You can use other things to store them with, or you can just bring it back and we'll repackage it for you. But yeah, those are the different stages. And each of those stages sometimes get separated, from harvesting to where the pods go, to where they're dried, where they're fermented, where they're roasted, can oftentimes be different places. So you also have to be kind of conscious of that. And what's crazy is that we don't label them or talk about that because we never know where it comes from. So that is a challenge. But if you do know your manufacturers, or if you know the local farmers, or if you know where it comes from or the business, a little bit of research will tell you a lot more about how they produce.